know it's been a long day. We're going to try and make this discussion interesting. In my mind, I think loyalty is dead. As I speak to a lot of young people, I was just talking to a colleague of mine, Sakshi, Gen Z. I asked her, what are the brands that you buy? Are you loyal? And she said, no, me and my friends don't care about brands. We try everything. अगर कुछ अच्छा लगा तो लेते, अगर अच्छा नहीं लगा तो change कर देते. So I think loyalty is in a very fluid, transitory stage as we look at the markets around us. But of course, I'm sure that we have a panel of professionals who are probably one of their biggest jobs every day is to ensure that they keep their customers within their fold, they increase lifetime value, and they drive loyalty. And of course, there's a huge amount of effort going behind that. So we're going to, I think, we have our last panelist here now. Try and do this session in 4 sections. I think the first one I thought could be interesting is that if you could look at how does each one of you define loyalty in the context of a post-pandemic, very digital first and now increasingly AI-driven era. Right? Is loyalty and the way you look at loyalty changing compared to what it was maybe 5 or 7 years ago? So it'll be really interesting to look at because we have people from very diverse set of companies where there's B2C, there's B2B2C as well, and that's an interesting mix to understand how they drive loyalty. So let me start Pulak with you. If you could talk about, I know you've been in BFSI, so you have a perspective of BFSI and now of course in Pharma. So when you look at loyalty today, how do you kind of define loyalty in today's context?
Thanks, Anand. I think you very rightly mentioned this at the beginning of our conversation that loyalty is dead. While I would say it's not completely dead, there's a lot of transactional loyalty today than it was 5 years back. And I think the whole COVID scenario has accelerated this because today, because of the high digital adoption, right, we have a plethora of options. So my favorite brand of coffee is now getting replaced with the plethora of options I have on Instagram. So that's how I see it's more important than ever to focus on loyalty because there's a lot of need, there's a lot of competition around getting a share of your consumer. Right? So yeah.
Krithika, what about you? I mean, you work in a company, PLIX Nutraceuticals, which is kind of launching very new formats and a lot of new ingredients, right? Apple cider vinegar, for example, is something that's completely new in the overall wellness skincare space. So I'm sure that you have a lot of trialists because everybody wants to try something new. Young women like Sakshi are saying, hey, what's this new ingredient? Is there a challenge in retaining them and how do you guys look at loyalty at PLIX?
So what I would say is that, until half a decade back, something like any kind of loyalty is driven much more strongly by product. Product was the epicenter of everything. You have a great quality product, you are pricing it right, you are making it available somewhere, and that takes care of a lot of repeats. Today that is really not the case because what the consumer is seeking increasingly is those are all hygiene factors that I mentioned right now. What they are seeking above all is are you able to ease their journey? Are you able to make their life better at different touch points? How much of convenience are you providing? And also, are you creating unique experiences for them? So any kind of loyalty, and by loyalty I would say it is repeat essentially that you are talking about. For customer stickiness to happen, what is it that you are offering which goes beyond your product is the thing. Let me take wellness itself for example, and you brought up apple cider vinegar. So apple cider vinegar by itself, great product and everything, but is that the only thing that is going to get my customers back? We actually thought about this and we found that customers are facing a lot of challenge that they are buying supplements but they are not getting enough results because they don't know along with supplements what else is to be done. Will supplements alone move the needle? The answer is no. They need to take care of their diet, they need to exercise and make lifestyle modifications. So instead of just selling the ACV, we charge the customer for the ACV, but what we also provide to them is a customized diet plan and a full workout routine so that it's a holistic journey for them. So we are supporting the customer in getting the transition into their life and that's what they value.
Same thing even in your business, which is very different. QSR. And I mean, my perception of QSR is that one is obviously taste, and the second is pricing that really matters because we're located at points where people want a quick bite and they're going to run. So in your business, therefore, how do you look at loyalty? How do you look at loyalty from maybe 4 or 5 years ago to what it is today? Because consumers, street food in Bombay and every city in this country is so omnipresent. Fight is always between, do I get a Jumbo King burger, or do I get Bhel Puri, or do I get Pani Puri, which is all happening in the same vicinity, right?
So hi, good evening everyone. So thanks Anand for the question. Loyalty 5 years ago, I feel that it was largely defined by RFM, recency, frequency and monetary value. And where the brand focus was more on transaction history, repeat customers behavior and campaign responses, etc. But in today's AI-driven digital landscape, I think it has, loyalty has evolved to mean something very dynamic. So right now, customers are more keen on looking at your brand's omnichannel presence than the emotional connection which the brand has. For example, for Jumbo King, I'm telling you, pricing is no more a differentiator right now because see, all this international brand in burger in this category, they are also on price war. So Jumbo King is no more a differentiator in pricing. Taste is yes, we are Indian and we don't have to make an effort to be Indian to adopt that taste. But I feel how we look at customer square. So here at Jumbo King, we have a team who actually respond to customer query within 5 minutes. They call personally and we understand the customer, what is the issue. So I think that loyalty has shifted from earn and burn to earn on and belong. Yes, so and do you belong?
Nishant, just a follow-up question on this, right? So we know that we are in an era of a lot of very transactional loyalty perhaps. Yes, emotions, human touch, making the consumer journey as seamless as possible is important. But do you think in your business where again you have customers coming for fairly high value skin treatments and many of them will come back to something else if they find it works, right? So between let's say emotional loyalty and let's say discounts or giving them some kind of price value benefit, what do you think works in the context of let's say Kaya?
So I think loyalty is about convenience now, right? For customers. Beyond transaction, as you said it's not about just increasing the burns, the earns and burns sort of programs that have always been there, but it's also about building that convenience, right? Because the customer stickiness is really kind of evaporating for sure, given the fact that there are so many brands coming in all forms and factors. So for us at Kaya, it's just kind of making sure that there's continuity of the service, continuity of the people giving those services, and even the form factor of our stores remain intact in that perspective. So for example, at some point in time we've kind of decided to shut one of the retail outlets, move to another, and we've seen that has kind of also impacted the customer behavior. So what we're trying to do is we want to stay back at the place of the moment of truth for the customer as long as we can, because that eventually helps them to ride on that emotional quotient, as I said. Eventually we have to kind of make sure that the customers don't really get an option to think about that what next, right? And also to kind of build this, in marketing terms we call it CLTV, but to build longevity with the brand, you have to kind of actually ask the customers, understand more about them and kind of diverge, right? So 20 years back we started as a skin brand, then we started doing things around hair, and today we do a lot of things around body. So we've also evolved in that journey just to make sure that it's, the loyalty is kind of really kind of two-way street rather than just a one-way street.
Let me come to two categories of your business and it's almost like a B2B2C business, right? So you have two kinds of stakeholders. You have the entire retail, because they're all multi-brand outlets, and then of course you have the end user, which are corporates, companies, and even end users of employees who take printouts. for a proposal. So in your case, when you're looking at it from a B2B2C perspective, how do you look at loyalty? How do you guys drive loyalty in a fairly complex ecosystem?
Before I go to the Century paper, and I was hearing everyone, and it's very interesting, so I just want to mention something from that perspective. So I think whenever a person buys something, it's a promise and it's a contract, right? So you give X and you get Y. And in that contract, in that relationship, there are certain drivers that you buy for, right? Those are the parameters of the contract. And what are those? Those are of course the product, that's of course the experience, it's of course all of them, right? Now earlier this contract, just like earlier dating was fewer, similarly this contract between a consumer and a brand were fewer. Because there were fewer brands, there were fewer options. So this contract was relatively, even if it shook by plus minus 10%, you still held on to that contract, right? Because you're never really ever, nobody ever is loyal to a brand. People are loyal to that contract. So if you do not satisfy that contract, you do not get that business. Having said that, just before this role, I was working in a company called Baggett. I was heading Baggett. And I wanted to specifically mention something about it. So in the contract, there are various drivers. Just like in a relationship, there are various drivers. Somebody is very beautiful, somebody is, very, probably listens well, somebody is very humorous. So you can still, in today's transactional world, have an extremely loyal customer base when any one aspect or multiple aspects of that contract is over-indexed. Suppose, like in case of Baggett, quality at a price was an over-indexed contract. So there could be 50 brands in the market, but that consumer will still walk in and say, "Mujhe Baggett ka office ka bag chahiye." Kyun? Because it lasts me for 20 years. So when one of those terms of the contract is extremely over-indexed on your brand, then you will still get the consumer back again and again and again, irrespective of the convenience, irrespective of any of the other things. It's important to therefore build that one construct, just like in a relationship. Right? Coming back to the paper business, it's a complex business, like you rightly said, it is B2B2C. And in this, more than the product, it's a technical business, it's a techno-commercial sales. So therefore, the one thing, intangible thing that helps in building this relationship is the scientific knowledge of the product. So it's the person who sells and his knowledge of that product which really makes that sale come through. Otherwise, one paper is same as another paper, and there will always be some quality variations. But the person you're dealing with gives you that confidence of, oh, I understand the category, and therefore, I'm the expert to buy from.
You say loyalty is driven a large extent by the sales force dealing with multi-brand outlets.
Their knowledge.
And their knowledge, their ability to kind of convince them that the product is truly superior. That's a fair point. Ritu, coming to you at Bayer, I know that you manage the OTC portfolio. And we talked about it briefly when we were sitting in the lounge, right? Because in a way, part of the business is also B2B2C, where the second P is doctors, right? And obviously, legislation means there are a lot of restrictions in terms of what you can do and cannot do in this ecosystem. So, at your organization, how are you navigating? One, there's an end consumer who buys a product like a Sarmah, where eventually there's no data being collected, nothing, right? They're buying it from the chemist, they're probably using one or two, and then it goes into a box. But then there are doctors who are prescribing some of your other products. So how do you manage this ecosystem from a loyalty perspective?
So I think, firstly, driving loyalty is probably not the most important metric that we would chase, because loyalty, like you said, is dead, and personally I never believed that there is something like loyalty that exists. Consumers don't think about brands all the time like we do, right? They have jobs to be done, and they figure out solutions that help them manage those situations, problems, in the easiest, most convenient way. That is how they think about it. Loyalty is nothing but the comfort, convenience, trust that they develop
on a certain brand when it delivers delivers the promise every single time. So I think for us, what we look at is the most critical part is that if Sriram says that it starts working in 5 minutes and it short gives you relief, it does every single time, and if that happens, that loyalty automatically will build in. So, and where we are in terms of healthcare, specifically in terms of self-care products today, while there is a lot of awareness that has happened as a result of the pandemic, post-pandemic, availability of information is a lot more widespread and available at a click today. Reliable information, however, still may not be as easily available. Dr. Google sometimes becomes the resort which may not give you the most reliable information. We focus a lot on providing relevant, reliable information, whether it is through the doctors or it is through content to the consumers, because that is where they make that connection, that is where they build that connection with the brand, that this brand really provides me clarifies the doubts, busts the myths that we have in our head. That education, that engagement, that delivery of the promise that the brand is making every single time is what in my mind builds loyalty, and that is what we try and chase versus really trying to build some mythical loyalty because it doesn't exist.
Okay. So, I mean, in your case also you're saying expertise does matter and your ability to demonstrate that through knowledge dissemination makes a big difference to loyalty.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, look, I want to put you on the line since Liz decided to reach us today. And I know that you made a transition of after many years in BFSI to now Sun. Now I'm going to ask you a BFSI question because in banking and you spent so many years in that and you'll be beautifully placed to answer this. So look, obviously most customers begin a relationship with a bank from a savings account, and then of course, as all customers of banks in this room, I'm sure you're inundated by calls from your RM asking you to invest in different type of products. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's also a deterrent, it's an irritant. So in your experience, you've always had access to fantastic first party data. You knew exactly who the customer was, you knew exactly how much money they potentially had over a period of time. But you still had to tread carefully, right? Especially with high ARPU customers. So from your recollection, and it's not too far away, how was loyalty managed and what are the key drivers for you when it came to banking?
So, in the BFSI space, customer experience, while it is a very cliched term now, it's really important, right? Along with that, I think engagement, again, another cliched word, but engagement really helps. I'll give you an illustration. So in the insurance business, it's an annual contract that you have with the customer. And there are a lot of companies vying for the same customer when the contract is nearing expiry. Right? So, one of the insights during our studies, we found that customers complaining about the fact that you guys come to me once a year, make the sale, and then you disappear until something happens to me. And that's the moment of truth, right? So, that gave us a very interesting insight that you need to go back to the customer again and again. So again, like Ritu mentioned, content, engagement through content becomes a very important peg to kind of keep that relationship going over time, where the customer also feels cared for and is given the right information at the right time. So that in the long term obviously helps build the relationship. Yeah, so I think that's how we've done it.
I'll come back to you on Sarmah for sure. But let's move to loyalty drivers, and we have such a diverse industry, so it'll be interesting to understand specific drivers that work for each of you. So let me start with, let's say, PLIX. Right now, your category specifically, there are two sets of things that obviously there's advertising, but there's a huge amount of influencer usage. And brands are using influencers right from A-listers all the way to micro and nano influencers, right? But the second part is while many of these are what you call the beauty, skin, wellness kind of influencers, there's also what you call by science-backed testimonials, stroke, communication of forms going out there. So when you look at what drives loyalty in your product portfolio, which of these two do you think really tips the scale for you?
That's a very interesting question. So for nutraceuticals especially, and even for beauty to a great extent, now the customers have a lot of knowledge. They know what is a melatonin, they know what does an ACV do, or what a niacinamide does, or an alpha-arbutin does. So it's very important when talking to such a customer that you come from a scientific background to build the credibility. It is very important that you explain to the customer that what each ingredient does and how it is going to solve your problem. So at PLIX, what we do is that every single product of ours is rigorously tested in a third-party laboratory, and any claim or anything that we say comes from the scientific backing. But at the same time, science also needs to be decoded for the general consumer. If you just talk and publish reports, it's not going to help. So it's a combination of that and the influencers who will help to break that science and also explain it in a very, very easy manner to the consumer, and couple it with other consumers' expectations and also with their own experience of how the product has worked for them, how to go about using it, what other things you need to do along with it. That education also comes in along with the influencer. So it's a mix of both is what I would say, which really moves the needle for the customer.
Nishant, let me put the same question to you, right? I mean, you're a different type of business, more evolved benefit, and now you're offering treatments beyond skin, hair, and overall wellness, right? And in your case, technology plays a very big role because you're bringing in new tech from and FDA approved, so you're bringing in some cutting-edge technology, but like Krithika was saying, a lot of times customers don't understand it. So one is converting a customer. How do you then drive loyalty? What are some of the unique drivers in your specific category that actually retains a customer or gets them to create advocacy and put somebody else in there?
I mean, your question was also kind of tipping towards the influencer bit. At Kaya, as we call it, we call our doctors the skin influencers, right? So for us, they become the biggest influencers. And rightly so, because, while we are in retail, but it's safe to say that we are in healthcare as well, right? And in healthcare, the biggest tipping point is, or the moment of truth for the customer is by knowing who is he getting treated with. So we definitely are, kind of double down on how many such content pieces can be rolled out, how many such biased or unnuanced or scientific backed papers can be published, and how many such media publications can also be attracted. So we do use a lot of content dissemination journeys using these content made by the doctors. Sometimes we try to also make it a bit fun-side-ish, which is more easy to digest as our analyst was kind of highlighting over here, because it becomes hard for the customers to actually know what are the details. And sometimes we try to kind of go for the high roof and look at things which are much more serious in nature. Like, for example, what does your skin actually react to any such given sort of a topical application? So we try to decode it. Having said that, we also work with influencers, yes, because definitely it kind of helps you reach out to a lot of more audiences. It helps you kind of also cater to a bigger impression base. So we do that. But I mean, if I have to just kind of, as you asked, what is the tipping point? The skin influencers, the doctors are going to be where I'm going to put the money.
Okay. So let me go from skincare to paper. And look, and we know that there are traders and then there are end users, right? And at least as a user of paper in an organization, typically, let's say if something goes wrong in the printer or the paper keeps getting stuck, you go to your admin guy and says, "Yeah, paper acha nahi kya hai, things like that, right?" And eventually, somewhere, the end user does become a significant influencer to ensure repeat purchase or not lead to repeat purchase of the brand. So as a company, how do you engage with the end user? I understand with trade, you have salespeople who know the product, are able to sell the product and understand the product well. But when you are not able to necessarily talk to the end user, what are you doing to kind of drive loyalty there?
I think for the paper industry is actually a very interesting question. I'll tell you why. So when we look at paper, like Aditya Birla itself, where I work, we make three kinds of paper. One is the typical writing printing paper and the Xerox paper, the copier paper, sorry, that we all use. One is the packaging board paper. So all the packs that we use, the mono cartons, all of that is made out of paper. And one is the tissue. So the tissue is a direct B2C product. Okay, so we have our own tissues which we market and it sells as an FMCG. I head the business for that. And of course for the others, even copier sells in a particular B2C pack. But having said that, so you're absolutely right, paper otherwise is not a very high involvement category. And you only will go and tell somebody this jar, then it's more like a problem, resolver. But there are 2-3 areas where we find that the entire industry depends upon consumer perception. One is the fact that is it a sustainable product? There is a very large thought process, a large way of saying paper is not a sustainable product and hence use less of it. While not just Aditya Birla, across the companies, whether it's ITC, whether it's Jacob, very large companies who are invested in paper, all of them use FSI certified paper, which means basically they're from renewable forestry, right? So actually none of it is unsustainable, but this communication, this understanding to people is one of the large things that we drive.
Okay.
Yeah? We have to drive this, otherwise paper as an industry is declining, or will have a decline. The second thing that we use the consumers a lot for is that it is good to go back from tech and use more paper. Right? So whether it is for your children, whether it is for you to read, take some time out and reconnect with paper and paper products, because that's something which you all need to do. That's another very strong communication that we do. The third piece of communication that we do is that paper is not what you only think which is getting, which is used as a copier. If you look at, for instance, Diwali as a festival, you will have paper in various ways. The check that you get, the bonus that you get, the letter that you get, the mithai ka dabbas that you get, the boxes, the lanterns that you put up, the various decorations that you do. All of this are in some form and part paper. So we are we are wanting to talk to consumers more and more in terms of saying, hey, paper is a part of your life. So we're trying to re-establish paper as a category. And of course, for tissue, etc., it's a very, in India, the consumption of tissue is so low that we're trying to get people to understand it's a very hygienic product and you need to use it. Yeah.
It's about 5 minutes, that time of the evening when you're really hungry, a lot of people are going home. And like I said, Bombay is, and every city is like a marketplace for fast food. So, I know you spoke about the fact that there's taste and size factors, pricing, almost all QSR are battling on pricing. That's not going to be a differentiator. So are you running any kind of a loyalty program that in a way incentivizes a customer to stop at a JK outlet and say, let me get my burger for today? And is there something specific you're doing like a loyalty program? It would be really interesting to know.
Yeah, so we run a loyalty program and which is completely point-based. And there, you can redeem our products with the points you earn. So along with that, so that's what I said. See, 5 years back, it was very relevant. But right now, it is not. So we have to go beyond that. Because, see, we are in a blended era, I feel, that the transactional loyalty which we have, that is like rewards, offered, incentives, these are all to get the customers in. Right? But the emotional loyalty which I was talking about, which is, where the customers feel understood, seen, heard, those kind of stuff, and also the value alignment with the brand, relevance of, relevant experience of the brand in customers' lifetime value. These are all very, the customers are looking at that. So, yes, our endeavor right now is to look at the customer so we also run a birthday campaign with our consumers. So we have a birthday week, we take the data, so and that is with their consent, and we they can redeem a burger in that particular day. So these are the small things, and also the feedback part which I told you. So I think the winning formula is to use the transactional tactics to get them in, and the emotional loyalty to keep them. So
human touch is super critical to drive loyalty almost. I'm sure every business that we're sitting in today. Ritu, coming to your business, and again, I know that it's a very different challenge compared to, let's say, Sanjay's business, because your customers are coming to the kiosk, they're hungry, they see it, they want to buy something. In your case, customers could be anywhere, right? And there's a medical shop, sometimes they ask the chemist that, I've got a headache, give me something for a headache. So when it comes to the chemist as a person in the customer journey, what about them? I mean, how do you treat them in driving loyalty in some form? Again, I know there are constraints of what you can do, but is that chemist population a critical part of your journey in driving loyalty?
Absolutely, it is. And I think, so let me break down the channel aspect of it. So chemist is of course still the largest channel where people go and buy any healthcare related product. There is also the e-pharmacies like Tata 1mg, Pharmacy, and many more. There is also marketplaces where a lot of products which are not OTC can be sold. So whether it's an Amazon or a Flipkart, there are a lot of products which are medical products but not under license a drug product and can be sold. So a consumer today is getting influenced by all of these channels and more. Even a doctor, and there are pharmacies which are attached to a doctor clinic, specifically in the case of gynecologists or dermatologists. So all of these different channels where a consumer is shopping today for any healthcare product influences. A chemist specifically in India is not just another store. Usually people have a relationship with their nearby chemist, and this chemist never wants to break that trust and that relationship. So usually the behavior is that if the person walking in asks for a brand from me, I will give that brand, I don't suggest. Only, so if somebody walks into the store and says, "Mujhe ek Saridon chahiye, sir dard hai," he will not debate that or try to give him something else, because that's the trust which the consumer is walking in. He doesn't want to change that. In the event of a person walking in and saying, "Mujhe sar dard hai, ek goli chahiye," he will give him what he believes will definitely work for him before prioritizing anything else. And hence, chemist education programs become very important. Telling the chemist that this is the brand, this is the formulation, this is why it works, what is the science behind it, how in a simple way, if asked, he can explain it to the patient walking in. I'll give you a very interesting example. We recently launched a product called Saridon Woman. It's for relief from menstrual pain and cramps. Now, it's a one-of-its-kind product in this space, because there is just no other pill which talks about relief from menstrual pain, and we said as a brand which is leading pain relief in India for 50 plus years, we must do this. Now, in this space, when we went to the chemist and asked that when a lady walks in and asks that I need something for this menstrual pain relief, what do you give? Said, I don't have too many options. Sometimes people come and ask for a specific tablet, sometimes I give them some cramp relief medication, but there are a lot of side effects, I don't have any solution. He said, this is the solution and it doesn't have side effects of the other one that you are prescribing today. And he latched on to it. He said, I would want to give something which doesn't have the kind of side effects which I am pushed to do because there is no other option. So they are more than willing to partner to give relief to their patients walking in. It is about educating, it is about that partnership.
We have about 1.5 minutes, so I'm skipping some of the questions. It's a really interesting discussion, but let me try and finish 2 questions that I thought would be interesting for the audience. And I'm not sure it would be relevant for you, but let's I think, given the changes that you've seen in consumer behavior, consumer journeys, etc., and I'm going to ask each one of you to give me an instance from your business. If there's an example of one very interesting or surprising insight that you found when it comes to loyalty, what would that be in your business? Let's start with you, ma'am. Could be anything.
So I won't speak about this business, but I'll speak about, I was heading a company called Shaze. it's a luxury product, right? So in a luxury product, what happens is you have a very small group of people who you are targeting. Why? Because it's not a very wide net. You need the same person to come back again and again, right? So, we launched something called the hosting collection, which had a lot of decanters and brew masters and pour-over coffees. And we realized that the way to sell it is not the product. Of course, the product has to be fantastic. It is a 50,000 rupees decanter. It might as well be fantastic. But I'm saying, apart from the product and apart from the design and all of that, it should give the person a talking point when the person is hosting. So the biggest thing that we learned was that if the person can show off this product and speak 5 great things about how to decant a wine, and you can help him do that, then he's going to buy the product. So we didn't launch this entire collection, as called the barware. I think we called it the hosting collection because we said that it makes you magical hosts, right? And I think that was interesting.
So in your business, what do you think is an insight that came to loyalty that surprised you?
Yes. So for us, I feel actually our stores at the metro stations, how they boosted the repeat footfalls. So now, it is no more just building a brand. It is like, the customers' love and passion for the products they have. So before loyalty and after loyalty, we saw this significant change.
For most of your outlets at metro stations?
Yes, that is, we actually made this strategic location to a strategic loyalty point.
So you by default have loyal customers because they have to come
to
the
commuters
station. That's
we made it a habit.
Nishant, what about you? What do you think is something, that's been not long in the business, but something interesting that maybe from a prior life to now you found this is interesting in this category. This is what drives loyalty here compared to, let's say, somewhere else that you work.
I think if the service quality and the promise is kind of withheld, and it's just always kind of delivered repeatedly, customers don't care about loyalty for sure. That's something that I genuinely feel. But having said that, I think we've also been talking about the fact that loyalty is dead. However, if you just go back in time and look at what happened last year, Indigo launched their loyalty program, which was not the case, which also goes on to say that they've also kind of felt the brunt of competition hyping up. So, I mean, largely, if you're giving good service, customers are not really going to care. And that has happened for us. They don't really look at what or how many points are accrued. They just want to have good service at their time and they want to work.
Ritu, what about you? Anything interesting that you thought stood out in the last couple of years that was changing the way you look at loyalty?
I think in healthcare specifically, one thing that really amazed me was that while we talk a lot about, people today are trying all new things every other day, it's so easy to get it, 10 minutes delivery. There was a consumer I was talking to and we were talking about allergy product. And there was a certain product that the consumer had been taking every time they had symptoms of runny nose, etc. And I asked, okay, what does it take for you to try this different brand? And we tried many different things. Finally, the person said, no, I cannot, because when I take this tablet, my symptoms need to go away. And if it doesn't, I can't even take another tablet. So the ratio of risk averseness is so high, you just can't afford to take anything else because you just trust that product, it will make your symptoms go away. This is not the moment for trial. So in problem solution healthcare brands, that loyalty runs so high and it runs in families, it runs across friends. That really amazed me, and I think it was not a surprise when I was reading a study recently which said that across markets categories, the top 5 brands which have stayed for hundreds of years and have not changed belong to healthcare.
Right. Krithika, your business, you're seeing data all the time, you know exactly what consumers are doing when they come to your D2C site. But what's changing in loyalty? What's that one interesting thing you see?
So, a very interesting insights that we uncovered was that, in a world where most of the brands are talking about getting instantaneous results, lose that weight in 7 days or get brighter skin in instantly within a day kind of a thing. What we decided was that we'll be very honest with the consumer and tell them that nothing is going to happen in a day or 3 days for the matter. If you want to manage your weight, it takes at least 12 weeks. which includes taking supplements along with diet and exercise. And if you want clearer skin, depigmented skin, that depigmentation is not going to happen in a week. It takes 8 weeks at least, and you have to be consistent with your routine with that. And that is the communication which we owned up and spoke about. It actually increased the loyalty of the customer.
So honesty and transparency, really good.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Interesting. Pulak, you've just come into now the pharma sector and coming from BFSI to pharma, I'm sure you're seeing a lot of very different types of consumer behavior. You have different stakeholders. So from your point of view, looking at loyalty in pharma, what stood out for you as something which is very different from what you've experienced, let's say in a very services category like banking, life insurance, etc.?
So, in our category, which is much more efficacy-based, right? Trust is a very strong driver of loyalty. And in one of the studies, I was surprised to find that being a leader in the category or those kind of trust markers score much higher compared to very tangible drivers like efficacy problems. So a consumer is likely to buy more from the leader. That could be leader in the category or any other similar trust marker indicators, right? So I think that's really something interesting.
Super. So my last question for the panel now, again I'm going to put everybody on the line. So I want each of you to complete this sentence. Let's start with Pulak since you finished. So in 2025, the future of loyalty lies with brands who do what?
Lies with brands who stand for something and do much more than transactional royalty-based strategies.
Okay. Ritu?
I would say solving real-life consumer problems and creating moments of delight along the way.
Okay. Ritu?
I would say it belongs to brands who humanize science.
Humanized science. Interesting. Very relevant buyer for sure. And so for you, Nishant.
Being transparent.
Wow, yeah. I think that's a fantastic example that transparency does pay off to loyalty. In a world of deficit of transparency and honesty, I'm sure that's a big driver today. So,
Yes, I feel that it should be agile enough to evolve with each customer's heartbeat.
Standing. You.
I think so all of those are very relevant, but apart from that, I think with AI coming in, I think there's going to be very soon a period where the bank is going to be just customized to you and your needs, and therefore extreme amount of customization or personalization can help you choose that one thing for yourself.
Outstanding. So I think it's been a phenomenal panel, very, very different perspectives, but I think the common threads are that customers are eventually going to stay with brands who deliver efficacy. They're going to stay with brands that they can trust, brands that are honest, and not brands that just give them the cheapest price. I think that's pretty evident across the panel. So thank you everyone guys, it was fantastic, great conversation. I've learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. With distinction. So yes, a big